Attention, please. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome.
What is up, everybody? Hello, it is Andy Smith, your 34-year veteran of the comic book industry, with another, I guess you say, video tutorial. This time, I'm not drawing anything, but I am explaining some terms that get thrown around in the creation of comic books that some people get confused. And there's three of them I'm going to go through with visuals. One is this artist did layouts for the page. And what exactly does that mean? And I'll show you examples of pencil page layouts. And then there's this artist did breakdowns for the page. What are breakdowns? And what's the difference between layouts and breakdowns? And then, of course, there's this artist did finishes or full pencils. And then I'll show you examples of full pencils. Also, I have examples of my inks over somebody's breakdowns that I can show you as well, because when you ink full pencils, it's way different than inking over someone's breakdowns. And I'll get through it all as we go through it. So let's start first and foremost with what are layouts. And we'll just start with one of my favorite artists who did layouts. This is the way he wrote. This is Keith Giffen. These are his penciled layouts. And he would do these instead of typing up. Let me just zoom in here. He would do these instead of typing up a script that says, like, panel 1, Batgirl is ducking as this character from behind is leaping at her, whatever. Instead of describing it, Keith could just draw these out for the artist a lot quicker. And a lot of times he worked with the scripter, and the scripter is the guy that does the dialogue and all that. So the scripter could actually take this stuff and dialogue it while the guy's drawing it. He would usually still probably wait, though, because here's the thing about these layouts. You didn't have to stick to them religiously. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this page, this is a standard 6-panel grid. And what I mean by that is, you can see it's 6 panels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 panels stacked on top of each other. And Keith Giffen was a big Jack Kirby fan and pulled a lot from Kirby. And one of the things Jack Kirby did so well was 6-panel grids like this. One reason Jack did it is because it sped up his output, because when he was drawing from either a script or even if he was writing it himself, if he did a 6-panel grid, that takes a lot of thinking process out, instead of going, oh, what panel should I make larger and smaller, and the flow of the page. If you just do a 6-panel grid, then you're just worried about, leading the eye from panel to panel and doing clear storytelling. So Keith did this on Justice League International, Justice League Europe, Justice League of America back in the late 80s, early 90s. Kevin Maguire worked from him. Bart Sears worked from him. Adam Hughes worked from them. And if you look at those books, you can kind of see Keith's fingerprints in them because of the 6-panel grids. Now, I worked with Keith on Mars Attacks the Image Universe. It was a 4-issue miniseries. He did it this way. This was before scanning stuff in. So I have his copies of his layouts somewhere. I know I have them in a tub with photocopies, because before I would scan my pages, I would photocopy everything, and I have all that stuff still. It's just hard to get to. So I figured I'd find some on the internet, but I still will do a like before and after. So this is from 52, when DC did their 52 series, counting backwards, and it was number 30, issue 30. And I was able to pull up, of course, the printed book as well. Let me see. I got to get to the right window I want to share. It's not that one. All right, let me. Oh, of course. It's this one. Here we go. Okay, now I need to pull up so I can see what I'm doing on StreamYard with you guys. Where's the, okay, this is going to be, there we go. Okay, now I've got it going on. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you look to the left, you've got Keith's layouts. Look to the right. I think this is Joe Bennett. Don't quote me on that. I also did an issue of week of 52 using Keith's layouts. I did issue 39. And you can see Joe stuck to the 6-panel grid. And you can kind of see, you know, the way Keith has things laid out. Batwoman is squatting down. Here you got a werewolf from the back, one in the front. Nice and clear here. She's throwing a batarang. Joe's got that going on. Then she does a kick. Now, see, this is where, as long as you get the storytelling accurate, it doesn't matter if you change the shot. So here, Keith has her flipping up, right? Doing a kick like that, kicking this guy, other werewolf dudes, and Joe changed it some, which is fine. It still tells the story. Remember, when the book comes out, you see what Joe did. You don't see the stuff Keith did. And then we've got this down shot. You've got Batwoman fighting. There's a leg in the foreground here. It's Nightwing. Keith is labeling people. I'm surprised he didn't label the leg Nightwing. And you can see it here with what Joe did. And then so on and so forth, going through the page. And then it ends with her looking up off the panel. Look at that. Joe has it going on. Now, Joe could have changed the layouts if he wanted to. He could have looked at this 6-panel grid and said, man, the coolest action on this page is panel 2, where she's kicking these dudes around. I'm going to make that a large panel and then work my other panels around it. But Joe decided to just stick with, pretty much what Keith was doing. Another page is, let's see, page 18, the one after this. It's a full page splash. Let me open this up in a bigger window so you guys can see it. So this is a full page splash here. Well, let's see. And you can see Nightwing is jumping down. Batgirl is elbowing this one dude in the face here. You've got the other werewolf creature here. Nightwing, of course, is crunching on one. You've got the buildings in the background, whatever. Well, let's see what Joe did. So you can see Joe changed it a good amount. He's got Nightwing leaping down from upper right to left, and then she is punching this guy from left to right. And I kind of like what Keith did. Joe's drawing is fantastic. So let me just say that. Joe's art is fantastic. But I kind of like the flow of Keith's page better because we read down. So we come down and we kind of get this downward motion of Nightwing crouching, coming down, and then we come down to Batgirl here from his head swooping down to hers. And then we read left to right over. So you get the feeling of her elbowing this dude in the face, and then with the background here of this dude's arm up like this, it curves around back in. So we've got this circular type motion going on in Keith's layout. We come over here. This figure of Nightwing coming down is freaking awesome. I mean, it's well drawn. It's really cool. He even gave it a Dutch camera angle, which means if you look at Keith's layout, the buildings are straight up and down with the parallel to the panel border. Joe tilted the camera some, gives it a little more excitement. So you got Nightwing coming down. But the thing is, he reversed Batwoman's punch elbow, So we go right to left. It kind of takes some of the impact away. Now, we come into the page that Joe did and our eye comes down to here. So we still get the feeling of Nightwing's boot crashing down on this dude, this alligator dude. And then from there, we go right to left. So it still kind of works, because the first movement on the page is Nightwing. So our eye drops down, boom. And then we go to the left, smash to that pig type dude getting his teeth knocked out or whatever. So he reversed it, but he still made it work with eye flow. Like I said, I like Keith's because while that's a great figure in Nightwing, I kind of like the crouching figure here. And when I worked over Keith's stuff, like for a splash page, I generally didn't change much on it. So on the splash page, so I would have probably went with something like this, these figure postures and stuff, and just done it my way, But that's the nice thing when you're working from layouts. And I do see it says up here breakdown. I'll explain why this isn't really a breakdown. Let's see what page 19 looks like. Page 19, I'll open it bigger for you guys. Page 19 is basically a 5-panel grid, which is 1 panel across the top and then 4 equal size panels. Let's see what Joe did. Joe did the same thing. However, he definitely made the first panel more dramatic. Now, Keith, like Jack Kirby, would use the hash marks on the side of the page that is on all DC paper. So Keith split it into three tiers that are all the same height. But then the bottom 2 tiers, he split into 4. Joe said, I'm going to take up the top half of the page with this great action of them fighting. And then I'll do 4 equal size panels. Now, don't get me wrong. Keith did great, clear storytelling here, but you're not really that engaged with it because you're a good, 15 feet away and you're just looking at it at a straight on type eye level as Batwoman kicks this one dude and Nightwing punches this other guy. Joe pulls us right into the action. He does another Dutch angle, tilting the camera angle. It's a low angle looking up at Batwoman. Great full figure, kicking this dude off panel, and then Nightwing in the background kicking this other dude against the wall. Nice angles going on here. It's a lot more dramatic. So kudos. Joe just rocked it. And then you can compare the second panel. The third panel as the one goes running off and they're in the background. The 2 shot of Batwoman and Nightwing talking, and then ending with another 2 shot pulled in closer. Now, I like the 2 shot here that Keith did more than what Joe did. To me, there's more dramatics to it because of the overall angle of her body and Nightwing's body angling in compared to being almost straight up and down. And in the last panel, I like Nightwing's head in the foreground here, but I like her head being tilted differently than what Joe did here, because hers is angled ever so slightly and leads you kind of off the page. Hers is angled in opposite direction and it doesn't really lead you off the page. So anyhow, that's the quick explanation on layouts by Keith Giffen. We also have layouts by, let me see, I opened up a bunch of tabs here. Joe Kubert. And I want to show Joe's layouts and printed books. So let me organize this the right way. It's backwards and that will drive me crazy. So let me just drop it the right way so you guys can see it here. Excuse me as I do this. There we go. Okay, so Joe Kubert. He was editor of Tarzan. He drew the Tarzan series at DC for 20-something issues before he started just writing it and handing layouts he did off to other artists. So here you have Joe Kubert's layout for page 1 of 17-page story called Drums of Death. I can't remember the actual issue number anymore, but this is the layout. Here's the, let me blow this up a little bit here so you can see it better. There we go. That's the layout for this page. Horizontal panel across the top. You got Tarzan in the background, framed by vines in the foreground here. Close up of Tarzan. Tarzan jumps up to some trees. And then you got a close up of hands. And Joe notated it on the side so the artist would know. Hands beating like a drum piece of wood. Okay. So that's cool. And you can see how the artist interpreted it. So you see how he interpreted it, which is cool. Now, once again, Joe's a great storyteller. These vines swoop in this way for a specific reason. It's to lead the eye to this next panel with the headshot. The artist here did it, but you notice Joe's are further in the foreground and there's a curve to them, and this guy's are almost straight as a ruler. You know, so lost a little bit in interpretation. Now, if you want, you could take Joe's layout, blow it up, and trace it off to get the shapes down and stuff, because Joe's drawing is so tight. And or you could just set your page right next to it and start drawing. Now, Joe's page isn't in the right proportion, as you can tell, but still, it's really cool. I'm not going to go through the whole book because I do have why is it not? Oh, come on. Let me see something. Of course, that one switches. Oh, wait. I know why. Let me see. Let me do it now. There we go. All right. So let me get to this page right here so you guys can see it. And once again, these are layouts. So this is page 4. Once again, all the storytelling's here. The second panel, just looking at it, you might be like, what the heck's going on? It's a long shot. It's a down shot of Tarzan taking on a bunch of dudes. So Joe establishes it right here, Joe taking on dudes, and he pulls the camera back to really get movement to it of Tarzan taking on all these dudes. And then, bam, he gets hit over the head. He falls to the ground. Next thing we see, Tarzan's tied up. And then we do another long shot. And Joe points out what they are. This is the skull. It's part of the mountain. Line of warriors down here, jungle. So you can see Joe loves these long shots because it really moves the camera. And by moving the camera that extreme, it gives you that sense of movement that comics don't have, unlike film, which is constantly, obviously, moving. So, but I love seeing like Joe's figure work here of the laid out Tarzan compared to what the artist did. I think it's Frankie Reyes. I think it's a Filipino artist. So I don't know if that's his real name. But I like Joe's figure better. I mean, Joe's just such a good artist. You know, if I had these layouts, I would trace off some of this stuff and then just finish it in my style. You know, some stuff's not tight enough to do that, but a lot of the stuff is. So, and then we've got the next page here. Where, you know, I got to admit, I like what Joe did. Now, this guy left more room at the top for the caption, more air. You can see that there's a lot of more dead space at the top of this panel and this guy's layout, but Joe's layout really, I mean, you're part of it in this guy's layout, the finished art, you know, but you're kind of like 2 or 3 feet behind the dude beating the drums over here on the right-hand side. Whereas in Joe's layout, you're like right next to the guy. So I like the lower angle that Joe did. Then we got the tall vertical panel of downshot Tarzan walking up to the dude on the throne. I got to admit, I like what Joe did, where it's just a straight on shot of the dude's throne, not a 2-point perspective shot that this artist did. But you could see he's pretty much sticking to it. He's making some changes. And trust me, if Joe didn't like the changes, Joe would have said, hey, I don't like the changes, but Joe did, so it's not that big of a deal. We'll go through 2 more pages here because I want to show other stuff. Here we've got this layout, and these are layouts. These are not breakdowns. These are layouts. And one reason is breakdowns are generally done right on the board that the finisher, inker / finisher, is going to get to work over, whereas these were done on copy paper. Joe's breakdowns were done on copy paper, not that big. And he wasn't really worried about the proportion of a comic book page because this is almost square on Joe's side. And then you can see the finished comic book page is, a rectangular shape. But you can see once again, Joe lays in where the captions are going to go so the guy knows where to leave space for dialogue and everything and to go from there. So really nice. What'd I do? I didn't want to do that. All right, well, we'll jump to this page real quick then because I do like this page with Tarzan and like the alligators and stuff. So here we go. Close up of Tarzan inset panel. Inset panels are supposed to occur inside the scene. So there's the overall scene, long shot of Tarzan, some of the native warriors, and the alligator pit. And that close-up is Tarzan's face from inside this scene. So inset panels take place inside the scene most of the time. So anyhow, you can see it. Now Joe's close-up is tighter. You don't see as much of his trapezius muscles and neck as you do with Joe's. I think Joe's is better. It's more intense. I think the second panel looks fine. The guy pulled the camera back a little more. Looks good. Then you got the 2 guys running. Okay. Joe's camera angle, once again, it's a little bit lower. So it puts you more in touch with the scene than this guy's does. You got Joe in the next panel, big foot in the foreground framing device. Tarzan's about to jump, warriors in the background. It's all good. Works fine. And then Tarzan looks like he's slipping, and you can tell he went with what Joe drew figure-wise and stuff. Very nice. So anyhow, that's another example of layouts and such. So let me remove that so I can find the next example I want to give or show you guys. Okay, let me see. I think those are breakdowns. Okay, so I want to show you what my layouts look like and then what my finished pencils look like. So let's pop this down right here. Okay, share the screen. Boom. Now I wish I had an in-between stage for these two, but I don't. Because I work straight to the board and I didn't scan in my pencil breakdowns before I scan the penciled page in. So this is from Earth 2, issue 27, page 1. Or no, page 5, splash page. I did layouts small. Now, when I say small, this layout right here on the left-hand side is probably 2 inches across by 3 inches high. And it's just when you do thumbnails, so it's called a thumbnail, but I could also send this to another artist and just label, Batman, Superman, Power Girl, Huntress, Red Tornado, and then this building down here is this science building, whatever, right? And then title and credits. So I could send it to another artist to work from. So it's a layout, not a breakdown. But when I'm doing my layouts, all I care about are big shapes. You don't see details of like anatomy and faces and things like that. I'm just trying to get the composition down. Then I pull out the full size 11 by 17 paper that DC sent me. You can see there's a perspective grid in here. I think this might help. Nope. Let's see. Blow it up some. You can kind of see the perspective grid lines right down here. You can really see them between Batman's legs and Red Tornado there. All right, let me zoom out some. Okay, so, but you can see it's almost a mirror of what my layout was. You know, the only thing I really did different is I drew the building smaller to push it a little further in the background for more depth. So there you go. That's that page. We've got page 6, and I can show you what I did for page 6, full pencils, right here, just to see how I stuck to it. So it's kind of hard to tell, but they're basically entering it, walking downstairs. I did a tilted camera angle right here. There you go. They're walking down the stairs, tilted camera angle. I pulled the camera back a little further to give it more of a long shot. As they're walking down, it's shadowy and stuff. The place is kind of is a mess, so panels are loose, whatever. Then we got a 3-shot here of Power Girl and Superman talking, and I did Red Tornado in front to keep with the order of the characters walking down from the previous panel. Down shot here, looking at some wreckage, a messed up doorway. Instead of doing these full figures in the down shot, I pulled in tighter and just put them in the foreground. I thought that was cooler. And because another reason is I already had full figures in the first panel, so I didn't want to do full figures again. So that's why I pulled the camera in tighter. I also overlapped it some, and then you've got Superman in the foreground, Power Girl chucking the debris out of the way, and this was the Huntress over here on the left. So it was Superman, Huntress, then Power Girl on the layout, but I moved her to the right because I thought she would work good as a framing device, so you didn't go off the panel. And then with Power Girl's figure and stuff, it pulls you back to this panel below where you've got the 3 characters just like the layout. And then the last panel, Batman, you know, they're all reacting to what they see when the door opens, because here the door's sliding open in panel 4. It's hard to tell, but the door's sliding open now that the debris off of it, and that's their reaction shot, which is pretty much the way I did the layout there. I just pulled the camera in tighter because I realized once I had these previous panels done, I didn't have any really big heads on the page, so I wanted to pull the camera in tighter to have bigger heads with Batman in the foreground on the page. All right, let's look at one more, and then we'll go to something different. So this is page 8. So let's see, page 8. That's where I don't have page 7. Oh, I do have page 7. All right, we'll do 7 and 8. I thought I had more. So here's page 7. We get an establishing shot of what they see. You can see in my first panel that it's the same height, basically. It's all these creepy, gnarly dudes. They're in this hallway type tech room, if you will, mutated type creature dudes, and they're turning and they're like, ooh, lunch. And then the next panel, Batman, Huntress come lunging into the panel. You can see once again I pretty much stuck to what I drew. The Huntress gets a dude in a headlock. And then we come down to Batman punching a guy. Now I changed it because I had Batman punching a dude, and then that might have been Power Girl kicking a dude, but I think I changed it because she's got him in a headlock, and that'd be kind of extreme to go from headlock to kicking. So I just focused in on Batman punching a guy. Yes, he is punching from right to left. And I did that because we're coming down from this third panel of Huntress keeping the dude in a headlock, and our eyes traveling down in a diagonal, so you actually feel the punch of him hitting the guy. And then the arc of his arm, shoulders going to the other arm, curve around to the next panel here, which is a higher angle shot of Power Girl punching the dude, Red Tornado swooping past her using her tornado power, and then way in the background, Batman and Huntress, you know, moving down the way. And then a door slam shut here, and that is the Huntress's boot right there. as we see the door slam shut behind her. And then here, the last panel, another door slam shut. And Power Girl's like, what the hell? And I didn't like what I did in my little layout. So I changed it to have more action in it where she's punching this guy and you only see his arms and stuff and some splatter coming in from as she punches him off panel. And then last but not least, page 8. Right here. So 6 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels, 2 across the top. From my thumbnail, I did a little overlap of the panels, but Batman's nailed down. Huntress is like, damn it, the door's shut, and there's a dude's foot in the foreground. Batman's just a little tuckered out, I guess. I can't remember what the script said, but I got him kneeling. And then Huntress looks back at the other end of this hall thing they're in, and she sees some scientists that are cowering in fear. And the Huntress is like, gotta go save them. And Batman's like, wait. So you can see I've got the perspective going to Batman's head to lead you to him as she's running off. And then low angle, she's tending to some of these doctor dudes in the foreground. I use them as framing devices as Batman walks up, and then close up of what's her face here, Huntress looking over her shoulder towards Batman. Boom, bing, bang, boom. That is how the page ends. So these are my layouts. These are my full pencils. Just to go through and explain the full pencils more. Full pencils are just like they say. There's nothing really the inker has to add. Like, he doesn't have to add any shadows. I've indicated all the black areas. I was even filling them in because I wasn't inking this project. Somebody else was. So I wanted to make sure my pencils were interpreted right and they didn't miss any black areas. So I filled all the black areas in. No shadows need to be added. All the inker has to do is go in, add line weights to establish depth, because I did not do that. He needs to make the rendering look better, because once again, let me see how big this will get if I do 100%. Fill screen. Oh yeah, it's pretty big. So you can see my rendering here. You know, I'm just using my pencil to scribble in the feathering and such. The inker still needs to go in and interpret that and figure out how he wants to do it. Okay, didn't mean to do that. Let me fill screen again. So all the penciler has, or the inker has to do, is line weights and figure out, you know, how he wants to interpret the rendering I did. And trust me, these look like super tight pencils you can just trace, but I could give these the 5 different inkers and they would all come back and look different because of how each inker interprets this feathering and stuff and where they put their line weights. So there you go. Ooh, scroll window. I can do that now. Let's see. Oh, just does that. Okay, well, that's fine. So anyhow, those are full pencils there. Because Kor-Drath is the latest thing, I can show you layout to breakdown on Kor-Drath. So let me do that. Close. Okay, so that's finished inks. We don't want to start with that. We want to start with this. These are literally full page layouts. Now, sometimes artists will do layouts, and editors, I should backtrack. Editors will hire artists to do layouts like this because they don't have confidence in the storytelling ability of the artist they hired, but they love the way the artist they hired actually does their finished artwork, you know, the rendering they do, the lighting and such like that. So they might take something like this and have me do it and pay me for layouts, because each pay structure is different. Layouts get paid less, breakdowns get paid more, full pencils get paid the most, because full pencils, I'm doing it all. I'm doing the layouts, the breakdowns, the full pencils. If I was hired just to do layouts, this is what I would do. I would maybe write in the background that it's a forest behind them, because I don't have to draw all the forest in. I just have to do the figures. And then I don't even have to do the details on the figure. So like Keith Giffen, I would label that this guy right here on the right-hand side where my cursor is Kor-Drath. And then I would label that there's Sky back here might be the king, the leader of the tribe. And if there's any other key figures, I would label them, and I would label them in these bottom panels as well. So this is what my layouts look like. After I do this, and this is on full-size board, you can see it's a 2-page spread, so it's 2 pieces taped together. Then I do breakdowns. And breakdowns, this is the difference between layouts and breakdowns. And this is my definition. Somebody else might have a different definition of what breakdowns are. I kind of meant to do this. So my definition of breakdowns are basically pencils that look like a coloring book. And what I mean by that is all the information is there that somebody needs. All the costume detail, all the anatomy is drawn in. All the person has to do is go in, and when I say person, I mean the finisher. The finisher's job is to go in and add the lighting, add the rendering. Rendering is like feathering, how you show the form, add shadows, fill out this forest in the background and stuff. That is what the finisher's job is. But the breakdown artist should have all the details of costuming and stuff put in. And then last but not least, I didn't do full pencils because I was inking it myself. So these are the finished inks to the breakdowns I just showed you. And I added all the lighting and shadows and stuff while I was doing the finishes. So I was acting as the finisher on this. And you can see all the details and stuff that I added from, I'll just show it easier. I'll bring the breakdowns down. Bring the breakdowns down. Break it down, yo. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it top, bottom. Oops. Here and then here. Oh, come on. You're not supposed to be doing both screens. Let's see if I fix that. I did. Okay. So there's the breakdowns there. And then here's the finishes down below. So you can see the difference between the two right there. So breakdowns, finisher. Now, let's get involved a little more. I did 4 issues of Legion of Superheroes as a finisher over Dan Jurgens' breakdowns. So I want to show you what somebody else's breakdowns look like, because so far you've seen layouts by Keith Giffen, layouts by Joe Kubert, and my layouts, my breakdowns, my finishes. Now I want to show you Dan Jurgens' breakdowns and my finishes. So let me organize this properly. There we go. Once again, it did go backwards. All right. I don't know why it's doing that. It's driving me nuts, though, because this one should be over here. And this one, darn it, did it again. All right. I'm just going to swap them like this. And it switched to another page, which is dumb. Because I'll get to it, guys. I'll get to it. I don't want to jump the gun. Okay, so you can see on the left, these are Dan Jurgens' breakdowns. Everything's there. Costumes are there. All the details. He did indicate some black areas with this big black shape in the foreground, which I kept. He uses a framing device. Other than that, not much more details. These are what Dan's breakdowns look like. This girl's costume right here, laying down in the 4th panel, is all black. So if you're doing breakdowns and a costume is black, you should indicate that, because myself as the finisher might not know it's black. So you would want to indicate it. But you can see when I was doing the finishes, I was literally told by the editor I could steamroll it. And what he meant was I could do whatever I want. So knowing that the face in the first panel looks more like my drawing than it looks like Dan's, because the editor said, go hog wild. So I did. Now, if the editor said, just finish what Dan gave you, we still want people to look at it and go, oh, that's Dan Jurgens, that's what I would have done. But that wasn't what I was instructed to do. So I didn't. So then, like, here is, I'm trying to get the same size. Close enough. Here's the 2-page spread. You know, lots of X's going on because these guys are wearing black costumes. She has black hair, so on and so forth. Once again, if you look at what I did, it looks more like my art than Dan's in the faces and such, because I was told I can do what I want. So I was like, okay. So I did. And a lot of this stuff, I didn't do just with ink. I own a lot of these originals still, and if you look at the back of the pages, I turned them over on the back and then redrew the figures my way, just keeping Dan's body positioning, because I was told I could, you know, steamroll it. And then I did stuff like, if you look at, can't remember this character's name, who's standing there with his arm wrapped around himself, but I got stylized in areas. So like you can see on his one bent leg here, I got stylized and it was like, oh, I'm going to drop out the lower part of the leg into just a white silhouette, because it doesn't matter. You don't want to be looking at that. Now, the one thing I had to fix was Dan drew this character with 2 left hands. So you got his arm bent here with the left hand. Now I'll blow it up so you can see it. See, he gave this guy 2 left hands. And I was like, wait a second. Even though this guy can stretch and everything to hold up his broken arm, he's still not going to have 2 left hands. So it was upon me to fix it. So I did. So, and you can see the difference in the things. I'm not going to go through the whole book. I'm just going to go through some key aspects. Most of the backgrounds Dan did, the backgrounds are fine. So I could either add blacks to the background, you know, shadows and stuff, or just keep it however I wanted. I just want to show you these 2 figures. You know, I changed up some, but not a lot. And then speaking of the backgrounds, we'll just get all the way over here. You can see Dan's breakdowns for the backgrounds. Once again, breakdowns, everything should be there. Use a ruler. Not all artists use rulers when they do breakdowns, but I've done breakdowns for other artists. And when I do, I rule things out that are supposed to be ruled out. You can see I stuck to pretty much what he did, but I did add some lighting underneath on some areas and on side walls and stuff, and added a little bit more texture. You know, the black smoke, I made it black and billowing from the buildings and such. Let's see. Here's another page that'll be a good one to show. Oops. Oop, too big. Too small. Let me... okay. So you look at this first panel. Dan broke the panel border with the guy's head and with this other dude's head here. Now, I could have broken the panel border, but I like cropping things. I think cropping looks cool if it's done right. And I think this looks cooler than breaking the panel border, because it gives you more of a sense of being inside a frame like a movie. And notice I zoomed in tighter on the guy's head in the foreground, because I thought it gave it more depth from what Dan drew in the size of their heads. In the second panel with them running, I didn't really change anything. I just, you know, I drew the figures out the way I draw, you know, because Dan and I draw differently. Here's a good example of something in this panel right here, this third panel, to kind of frame these girls up back here, the women back here. I thought it would be cool if I put some black lighting on the side of this guy's face and nose and stuff, besides his jacket being black and his hair, to give it a better sense of framing what's happening in the background. So that's part of the fun of doing jobs where you're doing finishes, like, and trust me, I love Dan Jurgens' work. And when I got this job, before the editor said, "Hey, go crazy if you want," I was ready to just ink pretty much what Dan put down and just make it look like my inks over Dan's pencils. But the guy was like, "You can go crazy." So here we go. This panel on the left, I didn't change really anything. I mean, it's my drawing because I could do that, but I added lighting, blacked out the bottom of the hand here, shadow, added some lighting to the side of the dude's face, you know, made it look more like mine. But on the panel next to it, I said, you know what? This will be way more dramatic if the camera pulls in tighter, because I also had the script. So I knew how much dialogue was in this panel, and it wasn't a lot to fill the panel. She wasn't going on a lot where it was going to be filled at the top and the bottom. And if you look, his head and her head are almost the same height. Well, by doing what I did, the camera really pushes in a lot faster and zooms in a lot tighter for the finishes. So it's more dramatic. And then Dan, same, he did a vignette. A vignette is no panel border with just figures. So I stuck with that, and I just added a graphic design shape behind it that the colorist colored somehow because I thought it would look cool. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole job. So let me go through and pick some other pages that I think are very cool, because the point of this video is just explaining layouts, breakdowns, full pencils, and what a finisher does. So let's go through. I'm just popping through these pages really quick to see what I've got going on. And I did this for all 4 issues. Oh, here's a good one. No, that's not it. Nope. 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 Oh, wait, what was that? Huh. Now I just want to see something. I had to redraw something, it looks like. Oh, yeah. So this is, here's a great example of something here. Okay. Let me share my screen again. All right. So got this pretty basic page. The first panel, I didn't do anything because it's just a shot of outer space. Oops. The next panel here, second panel, just looking through a window at these guys. Didn't really have to do anything to it. Just added some blacks to the side of the machinery and stuff and whatnot. This panel, third panel, I did do some more on, as you can see. I thought it'd be cool to do lighting on the side of this guy's head, split lighting, so you got light from the front, light from the back. I thought that made it look cool. And then down here on the panel below it, I thought it would be cool since he's casting a shadow. Dan has him casting a shadow, and Dan indicated some shadow on the guy's face, but he indicated reflected light. And I thought it would be really cool if basically the shadow, because look, that's a strong shadow. So you just took out all the side of his face into black. His collar's casting a big shadow, his jacket and everything, to really enhance it and make it almost a little more sinister. And then you got the dude in the background, didn't really do much. But the bottom panel, so Dan did this, and there's this guy in the foreground here. And I was like, that's cool, but it'd be really cool as a design element if I popped them out of the panel, and it would add more depth. So I did a few things. Dan had this black going here on the right-hand side next to this dude in the foreground, and I took that out, and I made all these figure silhouettes, because we've already established who these characters are. So why should I go through and ink them with this detail, make them silhouettes? We still know who each one of these characters are from the previous panels. And then I added some black into the panel to help frame stuff more. And then, like I said, I thought it'd be really cool if I pulled this guy out like that in the last panel and made him you know, just a cool figure, something on the page that your eye sees and goes, oh, that's cool. You know, because comics are a visual medium. I want that cool factor. So I did that. Well, apparently I had to do a patch because this is how the book printed with this guy from the panel above. And I can't remember. I think they had me do it because I think whatever the dude was saying, this guy was saying in this last panel, they said they broke his dialogue up. So it ended the page with him talking, and then you did a page turn. So they liked what I did with breaking the panel with the figure, but they said, make it that guy, because then when we turn the, you know, it'll end with him speaking. And so, I mean, this isn't Dan at all. Dan, you can tell Dan didn't draw that. That's 100% me. And I stuck with doing the split lighting on him. And by the way, when I was doing this job, and this job's like 15 years old, 14 years old, maybe 13, I can't remember. I was inking with a brush for like everything except straight lines. So all this inking is done with a brush. For you technical guys that are like, what did you ink it with? Well, I inked it with a brush. So, all right. So let's get to another page that I want to show. This one. So Dan, I mean, I love, like, if I could afford it, I would pay Dan to do layouts for like a superhero story, like a First Man story. And I pay him to do layouts, not even breakdowns like this, just the layouts, because I would go and steamroll it because I want it to end up like me. And it's not that I don't like the way I do layouts. I do like the way I do layouts, but that I like that collaboration. So anyhow, on this page, oops, that's that. Here we go. I didn't change up really much of anything. I kept this figure where she is. Like I said, I just flipped the page over on a light box, and, you know, I pointed her foot differently and did my drawing over Dan's layouts. And I think it looks cool. I added, you know, blacks for shadows and for adding some black areas to balance out the panel on it. You can see the 4 characters up here. I really like this figure right here. So Dan and I did 4 issues together, and instead of doing the art split where we split art from each issue, we split entire issues. So Dan got 2 issues and I have 2 issues full, and I still have them. So anyhow, so then over here, this dude in the foreground with the big ears, I thought, oh, that'd be really cool if I do some black on the back of them, you know, lighting wise, to kind of frame this dude in the foreground here. So on this dude, I only kept like his black t-shirt, and I didn't do any other lighting on him besides his t-shirt and his pants, because I wanted to put the amount of black on this guy. And then the last panel here, you can see Dan did lighting going down the right side of the guy's face as you're looking at it. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, that works for me. So I did, I just stuck with his lighting. And this is a case where I didn't even flip it over to redraw anything like on the back. I just did it all in ink because Dan did, you know, it was a good enough job. He's putting the backpack on and stuff. You know, I did more wrinkle type things on the harness the dude's wearing. So, all right, a couple more pages, just because I'm curious of what I did on this stuff. And I'm not going through all the issues. I'm just going through basically cool pages, you could say, on these. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a good example of something. I'm trying to find stuff where I made changes other than drawing stuff. So you got this page, he did insets again. You've got the futuristic Legion background, not much there to change. Didn't really need to. I changed the way he did the smoke. but I kept the direction of it. But if you look at panel 2, if you carefully look at panel 2, I made this woman's head in the foreground, or girl's head, bigger to really push it in the foreground and add a sense of depth. Because the guy in the midground here on the right, I kept the same size. So I really want to push the depth from her to him back to, I think that's Karate Kid or whatever. But by doing that with her head, that covers up his leg that Dan drew out like that. So I pulled the leg back so it wouldn't be an awkward crop. And then, of course, you can see, I kept the other leg. I kept this guy pretty much how he's drawn. And then the guys in the background, I just tightened up, what Dan did. And then I love this. Dan did such a great job on this face. I didn't really do much to it except ink it and add some different lighting. Not different. He still had it coming down where the shadows were being cast to the right. So I stuck with it. I just did it even more, pushed it a little further. And then like on this guy in the last panel, you can see Dan did some lighting on the left-hand side here, and I did it as well. So I wasn't totally ignoring what Dan did or anything. I can't believe this stuff's like 15 years old. All right. We're going to wrap this up soon because we're coming on an hour. And I like to keep these shorter. So let me just buzz through, see if there's any other pages that really, really stand out that I want to show you guys. No, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, this is a good one. We'll show, and this will be it. So here, we got the guy looking through the scope. Oops. Not much to really do there. I mean, Dan did a great job. Once again, great layout. He lit the side of the guy. He had shadow, on the side of the guy's head and his eye. So I kept that. We look through the scope. We see the dude flying. Didn't really change much there. Once again, since I was changing some of the drawing throughout, I still did that so it would be consistent. Then we got the guy looking down, another angle on him. He's about to fire. Dan had him smiling with a big teethy grin. I closed his mouth because I think it's more of a smirk that way with a closed mouth, and the guy squinting, of course, looking through the scope. Blam, blam. And then we got Timberwolf lunging in from off, in the next frame with, I don't know who this chick is in the background. By the way, Adam Hughes did the covers for all 4 of these issues. So, hey. But you can see I'm doing finishes. So like in this hallway, in this panel where Timberwolf's jumping in, I added this shadow on the wall as a framing device, because I thought that'd be really cool. And it'll frame them up. And then, I did a little bit of redrawing on Timberwolf here, but not much. And in the last panel, she's like, I don't think so. And she turns around and stabs him with her spear. She's like a Blue Devil type chick. And I was like, okay, well, no problem. Timberwolf, I adjusted some like everything else, but kept the look. And then on her, nothing against Dan, and I could have inked this once again. If the editor said, keep Dan's drawing, just do finishes with lighting and stuff, I would have been like, no problem. And I wouldn't have taken a pencil to any of this stuff. I would have just inked it and added shadows and ink. But the editor said, do whatever you want, redraw, whatever. He basically said you can do a Kevin Nolan. And if you've seen Kevin Nolan ink over Dan Jurgens or anybody, Kevin kind of steamrolls things and redraw stuff. So that's what I did. And I just tried to, make her a little more feminine and stuff. And it's just my style. Once again, nothing against Dan. I like what Dan did. And I like how I added, what I did to it as well. And like one of the other things I did was she's got this long ponytail and Dan has it ending and going off the page. And I brought it back down and around just to kind of bring your eye back around as well. So guys, I hope that explained to you in a good enough way what the difference is between breakdowns or layouts, breakdowns, full pencils, and then showing what a finisher does over breakdowns. I did finishes over Bart Sears on Blade back in the late 90s. I did where he just did breakdowns. I did finishes over Jeff Johnson on one issue of Legion of Superheroes and a villain issue featuring Bizarro. Jeff did breakdowns. I did finishes. So you can try and find those. But yeah, so that's it. Something I thought, you know what? Let's show examples of something. You know, my next tutorial, I want to get back to drawing and showing something, teach you guys something drawing wise. Any comments of stuff you might want to see, let me know, and we'll go from there. Until then, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and share. And more importantly, guys, I have a campaign that's live right now. If you don't know, it's my new campaign, Lilineth, Infernal Conflict with Dennis Turner. There's the cover by myself for the book. This spins out of the world of the Kor-Drath universe. We've got great covers. There's my main cover. This is my homage cover. You can guess what the homage is. We got the great John Malin to do a variant cover. There's lots of great tiers. Here's page 1 of the book. Here's pages 2 and 3. Sorry, this is the 2 and 3 for that edition. I wasn't even going to bring it up, but since I did that, we are doing a limited print edition where the book is going to be printed on newsprint with a different cover to give you that 1975 comic book feel. I did a layout for the cover featuring layout compositions they did a lot back then, not just for the drawing, but for the layout of the cover itself. And we're coloring the inside differently too, because it's going to be printed on newsprint with more flat colors like comics from back then. It's limited to 100 copies, and they will be signed and numbered, and you'll get a certificate of authenticity that looks like that. So you will be getting a certificate of authenticity as well with the book, knowing what number you got, and authorized signature with an embossed stamp on it. So guys, go check it out. Go back it. It's because of your support for my campaign by pledging it to get yourself a copy of the book that allows me to produce the book for you, because I got to sit down and draw this stuff. And it's because of you guys that allow me to do it. You are the producers. You're the Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt of this book, except it's not a movie, it's a book. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys with another video in probably around 10 days. I'm trying to do 3 of these a month. Until then, bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.